Right, okay, let me get this one started. Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 258 main event for the welterweight strap. Kamaru Usman defending his belt against Gilbert Burns. My, this is interesting for so many reasons. The main one because they know each other so well. And this is going to it will craft their game plans. It will also dictate their confidence going into fight week, going into the octagon. There's the potential for lots of games and lots of trickery and lots of mind games to be played. Let me just address that first, right? So if you're a young fighter on the amateur scene and you're going to a tournament, you've got no idea who you're facing. Sometimes you'll have a rough idea who's in your weight class, but like you'll get there, you'll enter, and you'll deal with the problem in front of you. At the opposite end of that competition spectrum, you've got the guys competing at the highest level in the world against guys that they can find their last 10, 15, 20 fights and can research and prepare specifically for that person. Somewhere in the middle of that, you've got the guys that know each other from the gym, the guys that have trained with each other, the guys that have shared time, that have shared laughs, that have had those hard training sessions where both of them have not been at their best. So this is still very different to someone that you faced before. Like Conor Poirier, the rematch, they both had a rough idea of who each other was from the previous fight, and then that would, to an extent, sculpt who they were going to be in the next fight. But when you've got two guys that have spent, and they've said hundreds of rounds of sparring, you've got to think how that's going to influence their mindsets. So the reason why that plays in is because the person that has the decision to make, based on his confidence, based on his success in sparring, etc., is Kamaru Usman. Because Gilbert Burns bookends Kamaru Usman's skill set. So Usman's a good wrestler. He's great in the clinch. He likes to slow you down, wear you down, basically just eat the clock away and beat you up until he gets the decision. I mean, he's only had a couple of stoppages in the UFC. The Colby Covington one, which was 50 seconds off being a 25-minute fight. Sergio Moraes, who's a very middle-of-the-road welterweight. And then his last finish before that was Haida Hassan, which was the Ultimate Fighter finale. And that was an arm triangle choke. So I can immediately write that off because I just don't think he's got the submissions, and I think he knows this full well. He's not got the submission prowess to compete with Gilbert Burns. So the question is, how does he apply his wrestling? Does he decide to keep the fight standing and force Burns to strike because he feels that that's his best route to victory? Or does he work his wrestling, his takedowns, to try and nullify Gilbert Burns, who's notoriously very aggressive wherever he goes? And that's characteristically how very different they are as well, because Gilbert Burns is an aggressor. He's always looking for ways to finish. Even in fights where it's gone the distance, you can see he's made efforts to get the fight finished. With Usman, in times where he should have made the effort to finish, he hasn't. You go back to that, the end of the fourth round against RDA, and it was almost like Henry Hooper was having a heart-to-heart with him. It's like, finish him, Mortal Kombat this dude, put an exclamation mark on this fight, and he still didn't. A few seconds into that fight, he was shooting. You've got to think that as long as this fight keeps moving and it's working at an aggressive pace and Gilbert Burns is able to find space to work, that it's him that's going to find the finish if it happens. And statistically, if you look at Kamaru Usman's record, the most likely situation is that he's going to give you 25 minutes to try and get the finish. So this is where Kamaru Usman's got to make the decision. So this first piece I've put together, hang on a minute, this is not at the start. The Raptors were playing about with it to see if we can get the reflection sorted out. Okay. So this first part I'm going to talk about, I've got two good examples of Usman and how he utilizes his wrestling. The first one is against Damian Maia, who obviously wants the fight on the floor. Damian Maia tried over and over again, and Usman's takedown defense is 100%. Statistically, 100%. So if he decides he wants to keep this fight standing with Burns, most likely he can do it statistically. Now, there are other things that I will throw out there, but this takedown defense against Damian Maia was really very impressive. And Maia's never had the greatest takedowns, but at the same time, he's persistent with it. On the flip side, when he fought Masvidal, he landed this takedown 15 seconds into the fight. And the reason I've picked this takedown out is because of how he adapted it. So watch this. Watch out. Look at that. So Masvidal's thrown a few kicks. Like, he comes out aggressive in this fight, Masvidal, because he's taking it on short notice. He wants to get the fight started and try and get the fight finished before his gas tank runs out. No doubt, that was his approach. He also knows that Usman is a 25-minute fighter, so unless he puts his foot on the gas, it will stay in third gear for the whole thing. So Masvidal came out very aggressive. And usually what happens, if Usman's fighting someone that is aggressive early on, even if they're landing shots and he's blocking them on his guard, it encourages him to wrestle. So that might be an instinct he'll have to fight here, because Burns is going to throw with heat on the feet, and he's also going to attack with all kinds of submissions on the ground. So it's almost it's a pick your poison for Usman. So obviously in the Masvidal fight, the poison that he decided to pick was the takedowns. Now, as Masvidal throws this kick, Usman catches it, and he's got a very precarious grip on that at the moment. I mean, it's not the strongest of grips, but what's nice about it is that this is the third time that Masvidal's thrown a kick and he's managed to get some kind of purchase on the foot before he's lost the grip. With this one, as he throws it, Masvidal gets his foot caught, but then Usman is immediately pressuring forward. He's immediately moving towards Masvidal. So now you can see Masvidal's balance is falling backwards. You'll also notice that Usman's lead shoulder will push into the lead leg of Masvidal as he closes distance. But the best thing about it is the switch of grip. At the moment, Usman's got like a hook, like a hanging hook grip on the outside of Masvidal's foot. It's not a great grip, but as he switches it, you'll see what he does. He brings the right hand through and he goes deep on that ankle. You can see that. He's on that back of that calf now. At the same time, Masvidal's still being pushed over. His weight's still going back. Now he's on an even more of a leaning trajectory on the way to the canvas, as Usman then goes for the opposite hip. It's just a really nice takedown. And as soon as I saw it, I thought to myself, with the aggression that you see from Gilbert Burns' kicking game, Usman is going to be looking at trying to catch those kicks, especially if they're starting to hurt. And Burns has got very, very hurtful low kicks. So as this comes in, this is definitely something that he's got to watch out for. And one of the reasons why Burns has got great kicks is because he doesn't care if you take him down. You know, I mean, what's his takedown defense stat by comparison? Let me have a quick look. Yeah, 50%. I mean, you know, he's stopping half the takedowns, but the other half he's ending up on the floor where he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master anyway. So, you know, would I defend all the takedowns if I was that good on the floor? Maybe not. Maybe that 50% is more optional than anything. But this takedown was really nice. And then Usman straight into his guard and he's stacking over him. And that's something that he's going to have to be very, very cautious of and very careful of against Gilbert Burns, because Burns is going to be trying to keep him moving constantly. Like when Burns fought Maia, although obviously he finished that fight with a punch, the grappling exchanges were very, very different to what Usman and Maia were seen to be doing when they were fighting. It was much more like, you're attacking something, I'm attacking something. Boys, you can't talk when I'm doing this. You fries my brain. So the two choices that Usman's got, if he decides he wants to keep this fight standing, by statistics, it looks like he can absolutely do that. But then is he encouraged to work takedowns if he starts to feel under pressure on the feet? If he then hits the ground and he's being attacked incessantly from bottom position, is he going to want to stay there? This is a difficult decision for him, and this is a decision that's going to be made before he gets into the fight by his experience on the mats. Like, there's a photo that sticks out in my mind, which I'm sure the Raptors can dig out and put it on the screen if it's available. It's Gilbert Burns shooting in for a takedown on Usman in a sparring session. And Burns is like really in deep, but Usman is defending this takedown. I mean, we don't know what kind of success Burns was having getting Usman to the floor, especially if he was tired, especially if he was mixing it with strikes. We also don't know whether that's going to change if Burns starts to try and pull guard. I mean, will we see Usman want to engage, or will we want to see him just completely disengage? So that's what brings me on to the next stage of the show, is we're going to talk about what he has to deal with if he decides he wants to keep this fight standing. So as I said about Gilbert Burns, he's got very, very powerful kicks. He throws kicks heavy because there's no reason not to. If you catch a kick, you take him down, you're in his world. But the aggression and the consistency of his attack is what I really like. And that is going to set other things up as well, because Gilbert Burns is he's naturally a fight finisher. He looks for the finish constantly. He's quite happy to stand and trade and strike with people that are great strikers. And I don't think he's going to get the same kind of looks out of Usman that he did out of, say, Kunchenko or some of the other guys that he's faced. Because, and you can see this really well in the Usman-Covington fight, particularly the early round if you watch. They take it in turns. It's almost like watching Dutch drills. One of them is a bit impatient to wait for his opponent to take their turn. Like they're either attacking or defending. They're not attacking whilst they're defending. They're not like slipping and rolling and covering and countering. There's not that level of striking coming from Usman. At least not what I've seen. Like with Covington, the only real attack I saw that was something down that route of like a higher level striking was slipping to the outside of Covington's jab and cracking in with the right hand down the pipe, which I'll show you in a little while. So Burns may be able to feel like he can just attack and nothing's going to come back at him until his attack stops. Like these are all things that he's going to know from training, from sparring, and from the habits that Usman's presented with him over the years. This is the thing that Usman's got to be careful of, though. If he wants to keep this fight standing and he wants to kind of jab his way into range, the power punching. Most things come on a looping trajectory from Burns, but most things they hit with power, they hit with momentum, and he's usually utilizing the full reach of his arms as well. Like watch this. So this is the Maia knockout, a couple of kicks, but this is as Maia moves forward and throws a jab out. He comes right over that lead. Oh, that's a bit of a weird jump. Let me see if I can play that through. Let me have a look at the replay. Here we go. Bang, straight over that lead shoulder. And that's a very, very casual punch by Burns, but you can see that natural power that he's got. Like, watch how he turns his front foot to pivot his whole body around. Bang. See how he replaces the position of his toes. Straight on turn that allows him to twist his knee, and he catches Damian Maia right across the chin. I mean, that was a really, really nice punch. And I feel like when it comes to the striking equation, it's going to be Gilbert Burns that's got the power. And whether that's landing on the face, the body, or the guard of Usman, it might encourage him to want to grapple. So the focus for Gilbert Burns is just keep this fight moving. Stay aggressive. Keep looking for finishes. Don't worry too much if you end up in a bad position, because he's got skills everywhere to get him out of those bad positions. You know, if he finds himself on the floor, he can attack legs, he can work sweeps, he can elevate, he can attack from the bottom. All of the time Gilbert Burns is attacking is time when Usman is defending. And whenever you've got a fighter that their primary focus in the fight is to control, you want them to be defending and then controlling, as opposed to controlling and then attacking. Like Usman's priority list is exactly that. Defend, control, attack. If you flip that around, you've got Gilbert Burns. And that is, I would say it's attack, control, and then defend in that order. It's a much more aggressive standpoint, but it's a very useful thing against someone like Usman, who is a 25-minute, he's a marathon fighter, basically. Average fight time for Usman is 17:21, which shows that he's had a bunch of 5-round fights as well, whereas Gilbert Burns, he's 11-17. Big height and reach advantage for Kamaru Usman, and he does utilize his jab well. So if he can utilize that jab and he can predict the movement of Gilbert Burns, he might be able to hold him off and then work into the clinch when he gets overly aggressive. Okay, where do we go next? So, typical Gilbert Burns, right? Typical Kamaru Usman, right? What do we expect from him? So, a similar opponent that it might be worth looking at is Rafael dos Anjos. So this is the first round, and this was the second takedown attempt. He was able to smash him into the canvas, to drown him up against the fence, and to defend anything that RDA threw at him. And this is the last round. So we're 20 seconds in at this point. This is right after the speech from Henry Hooft of, you've got to go and get a finish. You've got to Mortal Kombat this dude. He's backed up against the fence. He's landed a few shots, but nothing concussive, nothing significant. It's all wear and tear and damage. This is a frustrated RDA that's a bleeding cauliflower ear and just frustration. But these hurtful shots, dig into the body, knee into the inside of the legs, stomp in the feet. That is just a perfect little sequence of what to expect up against the fence from Usman. You remember the body shots he was landing against Tyron Woodley as well. The commentators were talking about them. He hammers those shots in, but still they're they're wear and tear. They're not damaging shots. That's something that's going to be a fight changer. I mean, look, body shot, inside knee, foot stomp. I mean, that's a typical sequence right there. And if you're up against the fence, this is exactly what you're dealing with. This is where Burns might switch it up a bit, which I'm going to get into. I think that we might actually see Burns being more aggressive with his grappling. I mean, look, last 12 seconds, last 10 seconds of the fight, he's just smashing RDA to pieces here, but it's just wearing, it's exhausting. Same thing with Colby Covington. I mean, there was a bit more needle in this fight, so he was being more aggressive, and the shots that he landed were good. Still nothing like, I mean, with all the beating that Covington took, still nothing to switch him off, though. So that punching power is not, I'm struggling to breathe today. That punching power is not a proven thing for Usman, let's put it that way. We've only seen one clean one, and that was Sergio Moraes, and he does kind of fold up sometimes when you hit him anyway. I mean, the technique's nice. He keeps himself safe. He never overextends himself. But it's not got the same kind of venom that Gilbert Burns has got. But definitely, I mean, if you're fighting Usman, you've got to expect this. If you're in there in the 5th round with Usman, you've got to expect this kind of performance. Not a scratch on his face, still in great shape, still breathing easy, and just beating you up slowly, just eroding you, taking away your confidence, taking away your ability to fight back, shutting down every avenue of attack and escape that you've got, and basically just controlling you and doing the amount of work necessary to stay in that position without getting stood up. It's not the prettiest of styles, I'll be honest. And when I was watching these guys, I was enjoying watching Burns' fights, and then I was going, okay, I best watch a couple more Usman fights. And they're kind of slow. It's a very consistent pace. So this is where Burns has got to break that pace. He can't accept the pace that Usman sets, because then he'll just work 25 minutes constantly. Burns has got to be more aggressive. And if he finds himself getting grappled, God, I've done it again. My mouth tries to keep up with my brain, and it just doesn't work. I need to learn to breathe a bit better. This is where I need someone to interject and talk for a minute while I'm breathing. Okay, let me get back to it. So if Gilbert Burns finds himself being wrestled and find himself on the defensive grappling, there's no reason why he can't turn that around. There's no reason why he can't be more aggressive. I know that Usman's got 100% takedown defense, but in situations where, in that photo that I was talking about earlier, the point where Burns had shot in and met those solid hips and couldn't get any further, he just sits the half guard, sits the butterfly guard, and starts working from the bottom. Like, the sweeping game, the attacking game, the leg lock game of Gilbert Burns may be the antithesis of the top game for Usman, which is why we might not see Usman want to be there at all. I wrote this down, and I don't know where I've wrote it, but I'm going to try and remember it. In fact, I think it might be on this page. Let me see. Okay, I'm just going to read this word for word, because I write these things down sometimes as I'm doing these breakdowns. Usman may have to use his wrestling defensively. A wrestler on their back is less comfortable than a jiu-jitsu player on top, and nobody is comfortable or familiar with being crammed up against the fence. Let me explain that a little bit clearer. Wrestling is about being in top position. It's about controlling your opponent from the top position. Jiu-jitsu, you have control from the bottom to an extent. You have options from the bottom as well. But a jiu-jitsu player is comfortable on the top as well as on the bottom, whereas a wrestler on the bottom is losing. That's not the same with a jiu-jitsu player. The other instinct as well for a wrestler is, if they are on the bottom, it's to belly down, which if you did that in jiu-jitsu, you get choked. So if at any point Gilbert Burns is able to sweep Usman and put him on his back, that's a very uncomfortable position for him. And nobody in mixed martial arts is familiar from a previous martial art, from a previous sport, of being crammed up against the fence. And Gilbert Burns is very good at doing that to people. Like, it is an option for him. If he decides that he wants to defend these takedowns, he's got a few options. If he decides he wants to turn it on Usman, he's also got options there. Now, watch this takedown that he uses. He defends against Gunnar Nelson, who was constantly trying to ground this fight. This is really nice. From a body lock position, little hip throw here. Creates a scramble, stuffs the head, gets back to his feet, tries to separate, but then Gunnar Nelson shoots again after the knee, and that was a clean knee as well. and he sprawls one more time. His takedown defense against Gunnar Nelson was excellent. But watch this. Like, he's going to be tied up in this position. Like, if you go back to Usman's fights, how often do you see him in this position? Head position, chipping away at someone, stomping on their feet. If Gilbert Burns has got 25 minutes in that position, at some point he's going to try this. At some point, he's probably tried this already in a sparring session against Usman. So again, that's the interesting play of these guys knowing one another. And look at that flying knee against Nelson. Fair play to Gunnar for taking that as clean. I don't remember seeing many knees as clean as that where people continue fighting, especially not continue with their takedown. But you don't throw those flying knees unless you don't care about getting taken down. Like, he already knows he can get back to his feet. He already knows he can defend Gunnar's takedowns, which is why he's happy to go flying at him like that. Like, the security of having a good ground game and of having decent takedown defense is going to allow him to be more playful, more aggressive. And he has got great takedowns if he wants to apply them himself, great top control. And Usman in this position is not going to be very comfortable because he knows he's under threat. If he's getting up, he might give his back. This was another great takedown against Kunchenko as well. Up against the fence, couldn't get close to a leg. You can see how close Kunchenko's keeping that knee to the fence just there. So there's no space for Gilbert Burns to get his arm around and pull that knee away from the fence. So he goes for the outside hook on the far side. The replay is a bit of a better version. Here we go, look. Outside hook and pivots him in this way. So once he's taken this foot away, like, you can see Kunchenko's base is spread. One foot up against the fence here, so that a whole leg is up against the fence. There's no way of getting around that without getting your fingers chewed up on the fence. But once this hook is removed, this is the only post now that's keeping Kunchenko up. As soon as that's removed, and what you're going to see is this circling in this direction as well, circles him away from the fence, removes that post, and puts him right on his back. Again, it's more of a jiu-jitsu, judo, Greco takedown, much less of a freestyle wrestling takedown. And as I said, if it hits the floor, he has to contend with not only ground and pound, aggressive ground and pound with heavy hands, but also the danger of getting submitted when he's trying to get back to his feet. And this was a great performance. And I know this is a lightweight fight, but we have no submissions on Gilbert Burns' record as a welterweight. This was his last submission. This was against Mike Davis, and this was his last fight at lightweight as well. But Mike Davis did a hell of a job defending these for the majority of that round. It just got to the stage where the wear and the punching and the constant position changing eventually opened something up where Gilbert Burns could exploit it. Okay, let me have a quick drink and I'll summarize. Okay. Where this fight takes place is going to be down to Kamaru Usman. He's going to have to decide whether he wants to grapple with Gilbert Burns or whether he wants to strike with him. He may want to just stay right in that Goldilocks zone and not deal with the long-range kicking game or the close-range jiu-jitsu game. That Goldilocks zone for Kamaru Usman is clinched up against the fence with good head position. If he feels confident with his sub-defense or he can keep Gilbert Burns cramped up against the fence where he can't activate his hip movement, then he might be able to work some ground and pound and control him there. But that is going to be a risk, and the risk may diminish as the fight goes on, depending on how he invests himself. For Gilbert Burns, I just think it's a much simpler game plan. Just be aggressive. In the words of Faith No More, Mike Patton, be aggressive. Keep the fight moving. Keep attacking him. If you throw hard. Manage your energy systems well. Stay relaxed. But wherever the fight goes, always try and instigate a conclusion. Because at that point, then Kamaru Usman goes defense, then control, and maybe never even gets into the attacking phase of his game. And there's a huge benefit to that, especially if this does go the distance, because if Kamaru Usman's in charge and in control, the rounds will trickle in his direction. It's Gilbert Burns that's got to be aggressive. He's got to go and take the belt from Kamaru Usman because he's not going to give it up easily. He's not going to give opportunities for Gilbert Burns to find his way in. And the fact that they know each other so well just makes it so much more interesting. The confidence of both of them is going to be very much dictated on how they feel, how they perceive those sparring sessions went. And everybody has bad sparring sessions. Everybody has bad training sessions. And if you train with the same person for long enough, they're going to see those days. So what does that do for the psychology of both of these guys? Kamaru Usman might be second guessing himself because he can remember the days when he was too tired and too worn out and couldn't stop Gilbert Burns taking him down, or could never keep Gilbert Burns off his back and was constantly defending rear naked chokes. These might be perceptions that he's got. On the flip side, Gilbert Burns might feel like he just can't do anything with Kamaru Usman. He might feel like he was constantly tied up, constantly worn out, was never a way for him to get his game into the fight. So like all of these perceptions, honestly, the only two people that really know the truth are the two fighters stepping in the octagon. And rematches are interesting, but long-time training partners facing each other and what they know of one another, strengths and weaknesses, technical difficulties, technical abilities, it just makes it so much more interesting. I don't think I've missed anything real interesting. Height and reach advantage for Usman. Strikes landed per minute for Usman, but the range on those strikes is going to be very, very close range. Striking accuracy is slightly higher, but it's easier to hit somebody consistently when you're holding them down. What else? 100% takedown defense. That's the one. Slightly more aggressive with submissions, as you can imagine with Gilbert Burns, but still doesn't invest loads of energy in submissions. Will quite happily beat you up and wear you down a little bit as well. Anyway, I think I've said everything I need to say. It's a hell of a fight, and the welterweight belt will be on the line, which makes it even more spicy. So enjoy it, and see you next time.